Well, welcome back to Gopher's Workshop. I'm your host, Aaron, and joining me, as always, is my fellow host, Chris.
Hello.
And Sky.
You can only use one bomb squig a turn.
Still on that, huh? What is that, 3-4 weeks now?
They just eroded it again.
Someone's so mad. I don't blame you. I can't say I blame you on this one. I'm sorry you got eroded, buddy.
Erratas aren't bad. Also, the third errata on the same single paragraph means maybe we should have paid for a little editing before we printed this.
Yeah, when your lead-in paragraph includes like 4 clauses and 3 commas, maybe just start over.
You did it. You broke it. Move on. God.
As it pertains to our conversation today,
yes,
I wish everyone here's the secret to understanding all of 40K rules. Every single one. When you read them, I want you to rewrite the rule. Don't change the words, just rewrite it and turn them into bullet points. Okay? If you read every rule as a list of bullet points, things make more sense. They use a million commas and run-on sentences.
You're right.
And just turn it all into bullet points. We'll be okay.
Aaron hasn't even said what this podcast is about.
You're right.
He's already mad about the rules.
Can I read the bomb squig rule word for word with the commas for you? After this balance update, mind you, bomb squigs, semicolon, once per battle, comma, for each bomb squig the unit has, comma, after this unit ends a normal move, comma, you can use 1 bomb squig, period. If you do, comma, select 1 enemy unit within 12 inches invisible to this unit and roll 1d6, semicolon. On a 3+, comma, the enemy unit suffers D3 mortal wounds, period.
It's too many commas.
There was almost as much punctuation as there was words.
So that brings us to our episode today. We're going to talk about rules. We're going to talk. I scoured the internet. I scoured Chris's favorite page. I scoured Reddit.
I'm gonna scream.
And some of these you're going to listen to these as old school 40K players and go, why is that a question? Some of you new players are going to go, no, that totally makes sense to me. I've picked questions out that arguably, I'd say 50-50 are good questions, and some of them that are like beginner level questions. So everybody's inclusive here. But yes, Chris got a chance to look over some of these before. I'm going to ask him, and he was already ready to scream last night.
Okay, in my defense, it's not that I minded answering questions at any level. It's that you like shorthanded stuff. So I read it and I'm like, I don't even know what the question is.
So to start, we're going to start with a doozy here. This one actually got Chris thinking for a while on.
You're right.
So
and this is actually a good one. It's a good question.
It is. So how does Model OC increase work for units that become battle shocked, but also gain the benefit from banners, i.e. Sanguinary Guard and Ancients? So how does that work for us?
So there's a couple of things here, and there's actually an easy answer. So let's start with the easy part, and then we can make it more complicated for no reason.
Absolutely.
So, I don't care if we're talking about OC, if we're talking about the damage characteristic, all of these things have the same order of operations. If you are ever setting a characteristic, I am setting it to 0 because it's battle shocked. I am setting it to 3 because that's what my ability says. You set the number first before any modifiers. Then, after you set the number, you then divide then multiply, then add, then subtract. After you do all of those things, if there's a cap for some reason, then you introduce the cap. This is a long string of nonsense, and this is complicated because, first off, we're American competitive players, and we had to make it complicated. We fight about it. But this is, so for those who want to read this exact thing, I strongly suggest you look up rules. Whenever you don't know, don't just argue about it, look it up, learn a thing, right? This is in the core rules update that you can find on Warhammer Community Downloads 40K. Core rules update. And then you just go down to the spot where it talks about modifiers. And then it goes through all of this, okay? I think it's modifiers, modifying characteristics, something like that.
Yep.
Okay. So, yes, arguably it's a little complicated here. But when you're talking about banners because of war gear or whatever else, it's about the wording. It's not actually because it's a piece of war gear. That's irrelevant to the conversation. It's my OC on my data sheet says 1 or 2, whatever the number is. And then Battle Shocked sets it to 0. And then this piece of war gear says in its description, I add 1. Well, set goes first. There's no dividing, no multiplying. We add 1. Nailed it. We went from 0 to 1. And then we subtract. There's no subtracting. Okay, cool. So that's how we end up at 1, even though we're Battle Shocked. Mm-hmm. Okay. There are rules in the game that basically set it to a number first. So like if this Lysander is my leader, then like Terminators have an OC 3. Well, that's like setting the data sheet to 3.
Yep.
All right. That's pretty good. Okay. But that's still setting. So if I'm Battle Shocked, setting happens and I'm back to 0. Yep. And that's a whole nother order of operations thing. Basically, the core rule takes precedence, but it's not subtracting, it's not adding, it's setting. So that happens prior to any adding or subtracting.
So that brings me to the next part of this question, which is once this happens, my Sanguinary Guard, we'll use an example, has an OC of 1. Does this mean I can use stratagems on them still?
No. Because you're Battle Shock specifically prevents you from targeting them with stratagems. Most of the time, though we'll see, I have to double check the new mission pack. A lot of times it actually prevents you from doing actions at all. So there's a bunch of things it prevents you from doing because you're Battle Shocked. Now you happen to have a rule that gets around the 0 OC setting, but that doesn't mean that you're not Battle Shocked. You are still technically Battle Shocked.
Perfect. So right now we have answers for these rules. You ready for this next doozy?
Sure am.
After I complete a charge, am I required to pile in? And if so, am I required to consolidate after?
Trick question. So
when you're chosen to fight is the first part.
Correct. So after you make a charge move that is in the charge phase, you do no other things other than declare other charge. Now that you're in the fight phase, if you're within engagement range and or successfully charged, you can be selected to fight. You must be selected to fight at some point because every unit that is eligible to fight must. Okay. Now that we are selected to fight because we must be selected to fight, I'm in engagement range. I am required to fight. Now, yes, you are technically obligated to pile in. But what does piling in mean? It means moving up to 3 inches. Turns out you can move 0. So while you are obligated to do the pile in step, there's a real ability to, no, but this dude is standing on the objective, or this dude is still inside the aura of my leader guy. So I'm going to choose to not pile him in to maintain that connection to whatever thing I'm trying to connect to. Now, as you are piling in, this is considered a move of sorts. So you are still obligated to maintain unit coherency. So if you choose to pile in that guy 0 inches, that means some of your other models may not be able to pile in because they would break coherency. So they're also obligated to 0 inches or something of that nature.
Mm-hmm.
So complicated question. The answer is technically yes, you are obligated to pile in. However, you can 0 inch pile in, which means you kind of can say no.
And the same rule applies for consolidate.
Correct. The only exception to consolidate is there is a time where you're not allowed to consolidate. Let's say you charge and you clobber whatever unit. I blew up the vehicle. Hooray, it's gone. Well, now when you go to consolidate, it's 3 inches up 2. So you could choose 0. You could choose 3. But you are obligated to make engagement range of another enemy unit, or you are obligated to end in control range of an objective. If you happen to be out in the middle of nowhere and that 3 inches gets you to neither engagement range or to onto the control of an objective, you are not allowed to consolidate. So consolidate, it has an exception. There are times where you are not obligated to the consolidate because you're not allowed to consolidate. But if you are able to consolidate, again, I could go 3 inches and engage that unit. But if I do, they're going to swing back and that's going to hurt too much. I can just choose 0 inches, which effectively means I'm not piling or not consolidating, but I still did the step. I'm still obligated to go through the consolidate step.
Okay. So next question. Can characters cause units to lose keywords? For example, here, across Reddit, especially when the new Death Guard rules came out, typhus and poxwalkers with infiltrate was a big question. And a lot of people are putting typhus into home deployment and spreading their poxwalkers through the midboard in a big long string line.
Okay. So there's a couple of layers here. So I'm going to start by, and I encourage this a lot, but I'm going to start by clarifying some terminology, because if we use the correct terminology, it will help all of us remember a little better. Infiltrate is not a keyword. It's effectively an ability. Okay. So as far as keywords are concerned, like infantry, beast, monster, things like that, those are only additional. They're like compounding. If the unit's beast, but I put a character in there and the character happens to be infantry, the unit is both a beast and an infantry. So it's cumulative. As far as abilities are concerned, there are many abilities that are not. So if this example, poxwalkers have infiltrate and you attach a character that doesn't have infiltrate, because not every model in the unit has infiltrate, no model in the unit is allowed to infiltrate. Specifically in the infiltrate wording, if every model in the unit has the infiltrate ability, you get to do X. Well, it turns out not every model does. So it doesn't matter what it says after that. There is no model that is allowed to do that thing. So I understand if you look at it strictly from a datasheet basis or from a like per model basis, why you would think you could do that. But the reality is you shouldn't be doing that. You don't have infiltrate. Same thing goes with scout. Same thing goes with a bunch of other stuff. Stealth, lone op.
So now that we understand the importance and the difference between keywords and abilities, that brings me to the next part of this question. Is there a point where you can attach a model that is, let's say, mounted to an infantry unit and give it a new ability?
Absolutely. So while a character is attached, which the leader ability on individual characters or data sheets will determine who's allowed to be attached, assuming the attaching is legal. Once that character is attached, whatever the abilities are on the character or on the data sheet, cross-reference each other because they're all a part of the same unit. So if, let's say the character says this model gets dev wounds on the charge, well, it still only applies to that model. But if he says this models in this unit get +1 to hit, well, that not only applies to himself because he's in the unit, but that applies to the other data sheet that is now technically a part of that unit. And vice versa. So if the data sheet says I get to reroll ones to wound. Well, that's pretty good. But now that the character's attached, he's a part of the unit, and the ability says models in this unit get to reroll ones to wound. So the character does as well, even though it's not on his data sheet, because he is a part of that unit.
Okay. So our next question is, can I draw a line of sight to a model that's behind cover, but a tiny portion of the model is visible, such as cloth, gun, a sconce?
Okay, so this is a giant gray area. Objectively, the rules say if you can see the model, you have line of sight. However, there is a, not even an errata, but like a rules clarification, like as intended by GW, to where they say, for lack of a better term, frilly bits, like excess nonsense shouldn't be used. That's not as intended. So like, I have a Layman Rust tank. I can definitely see the turret. That means I can definitely shoot the tank, right? But if the only thing I could see is the antenna, that's not really as intended, right? Because if they didn't have the antenna glued on because it broke off, or they just decided not to glue it on because they didn't like the look or for transporting, it's not that they built the model illegally. They're not building it for advantage. They just didn't want to keep breaking and having to reglue it. So that's kind of considered a frilly bit. The reason this is such a gray area is because it's not defined by GW as to what are those excess bits. So sometimes, yes, it applies to antennas. Sometimes it applies to like the cloak. Other times, like wings are a great example. On certain models, you could argue the wings are absolutely excess. They're not like the old Sanguinary Guard models. They had like the big wings, right? Well, that's not really like a thing that's the body of the model. But also you can make the argument of like, but that's how you identify them. So it's a relevant piece that is needed to identify them. So this is where it creates this giant gray area of, yeah, the best answer is you need to talk with your opponent ahead of time. If you're under the assumption that you don't get to see me because you can see my antenna, that's probably a safe assumption. If it's something like a cloak or something like the little flames on your backpack, you should probably discuss that. But even if you don't, because you're just under the assumption we've played a bunch of times and we know what we're talking about, if you're ever in a disagreement on this, it is very reasonable to call over a judge. Because this is such a gray area, unless you have a terrible TO, they should come over and be like, oh yeah, I understand this is weird. Yes, that cloak happens to count as being able to see the model. Or no, that like excess bit that you decided to model because you have a sweet display board and you did some conversions, that won't count because that's not a part of the original model. Yes, it looks cool, but we're not going to count that for line of sight because it shouldn't even be there, right? You have a bunch of gray area here. The TO should not be upset that you're asking this because yes, they're probably busy and you kind of should have talked about it ahead of time, but we understand that you're trying to rush because you're like on a clock, right? Especially at tournaments.
Oh yeah.
It's okay. Try to work it out with your opponent. But if you can't work it out, there's no point in arguing for 10 minutes and then you're both out time and like nobody's happy. Just be like, hey, I understand there's a disagreement and it could go both ways. We're just going to call a judge. Whatever the judge says goes, and we'll, at least for this event, we'll accept that as the answer. But now it's not, I'm arguing with you for 10 minutes. Now we're both upset at each other. It's hey, this could go either way. We're just going to get a ruling for this game. We'll move on and then we'll all have a good time.
Yeah. The example I had was particularly for me was my Sanguinary Guard captain. He's got the old Sanguinor model wings on him. Well, those are frilly bits. They don't come stock on the model. That's just added flair for me.
Yeah. And again, I would argue, A, it's definitely not modeling for advantage. And B, you're doing it for like a fun thematic theme thing. You should not be penalized for that. Like part of the hobby is to have fun hobbying. GW actively encourages you to like hobby as a part of the game. You get points for that. So I would never penalize you for that because I don't think that's fair or appropriate to you, nor do I think it's the intent of GW to penalize you for that. That being said, again, if we're talking about regular Sanguinary Guard, and you have the little flappy bits that they added that are pseudo wings on the new model, there is a fair argument to say, while they are excess and not really a part of the function of the model, they are an identifying mark. Maybe you should include them. But again, that's a mostly irrelevant conversation given the poses of those models. The likelihood you're going to see the little flap of a Sanguinary Guard model and not any other part of the model is rare, to say the least.
Yeah. Well, it's the same thing. Like normal jump pack intercessors have that very same flap.
Correct. So
it's one of those things where, okay, clearly jump pack models all have this. It's clearly identifiable mark of a jump pack model. Ergo, it's shootable.
I got a fun one to ask Aaron.
Oh, go for it, cowboy.
Okay, so there's 6 mega knobs, and there's a big L-shaped piece of terrain. And on the outside part of the terrain, there's 5 mega knobs. And the 6th one is inside the L, behind the not GW rule of it's out of line of sight because it's on the first floor.
So you're visible and in the terrain piece. One model is visible and in the terrain piece, is what I'm hearing.
No, one model is not visible and in the terrain piece. The other 5 are visible. They're incoherency through the wall.
Okay.
You target them to shoot them, and you can see the 5, but not the 6th guy. Mm-hmm. Do they get cover?
Yes.
Correct.
Because even though your 6th guy is not in the terrain piece, which arguably, according to the rule, says is when you get cover, he is still not visible, meaning he couldn't be seen from the shooting model. Ergo, he had cover to begin with. So everybody should be getting cover. As long as your first 5 are actively in the terrain.
Well, even the reverse piece of that is what he's saying, but that's still true.
Yeah, either way.
So there's 2 parts to cover. Again, break every rule down to bullet points. This makes the whole game an easier system to understand. Because all tournament layouts, or whatever you want to call them for terrain, tend to use strictly ruins, this comes up quite a bit. There are 2 parts to ruins cover. The first is if your model is wholly within the template, you get the benefit of cover, period. Most people know that. Everybody understands that. The second part is where people get confused. If the attacking model cannot see every model in the defending unit, then the defending unit gets cover. Okay? Again, break it down to bullet points. It's way easier. And this is in the ruins rules of the core rules. So if you go to the ruins section, it'll talk about visibility. It'll talk about benefit of cover. And in there, it very clearly states how it works. Okay.
So let me throw a wrench in your work here and ask you another question I saw on Reddit. How does a forest template work if I'm behind it and if I'm in it?
So forests, while they're not used competitively, are still have rules in the game. And the simple answer is forests give the benefit of cover if you are wholly in the template or if your opponent is shooting through the template. For the most part, it does not have it doesn't have the obscuring rule. So standing on the other side, you are still seeable. But as much as it doesn't have obscuring, it basically, as far as cover is concerned, works very much like ruins otherwise. Mm-hmm. Standing inside it, you get cover. Second bullet point. If they're shooting through the template in some way, like part of the template is blocking your model, you get the benefit of cover. Now, I'll add one more line on here. If you've got, like, especially in the tournament scene, you have templates that don't actually have walls, right? So you're wholly on the template, but you are not being blocked by any walls. So they're able to see everything in the unit. Mm-hmm. When they go to shoot, the player who's rolling their saves, if they are taking the benefit of cover, despite you being able to see every model in that unit, they must take the save on the model in the template that actually has cover. Because the only way to give the whole unit cover is by saying that the attacking model can't see the whole unit. Again,
or the entire unit is in the actual terrain piece.
Sure.
With a template.
Yes, by the template, wholly within the template, that is cover per model.
Yeah, so
cover
in the mega
cannot see the whole unit, is by the unit.
Yeah, so in the Mega Knobs example, if you had the one guy on the template and the 5 guys not on it, and you took the walls completely away, only the one guy in the corner gets cover. And I would have to roll saves on him first, and once he's dead, there's no cover bonus.
Correct. And again, this is a simple rule, but it is complicated. And the thing that makes it the most complicated is the way they word it, right? Like if they made bullet points, everyone would have a better understanding of what's going on, but they don't do that because they're British, I guess. I don't know. So when reading rules, try to read them and not just read it like a book, but read it like a bunch of bullet points, and know that those bullet points, for the most part, tend to not be determined by the other bullet points. They are separate entries, and that will help you understand what's going on most of the time.
Come. So, you ready for your next question?
Absolutely.
All right. So this we're throwing it back to our Tau boys here. So when using a Tau model to guide another unit, can I guide a lone up unit? Can I select a lone up unit outside of 12? I'm outside of 12 as a model who wants to guide.
Yes. Now you still won't be able to shoot at that thing unless the shooting unit is within 12.
Yes.
But the answer is yes. And there's more examples than just Tau's guiding. If you remember Grey Knights, they have the Vortex of Doom ability. So they can Vortex of Doom deal a bunch of mortal wounds to a unit that has lone op despite being outside 12. The reason all of this is true is because the very specific wording of lone op refers to being shot at. So when making a ranged attack against them, lone op applies. But it turns out guiding, Vortex of Doom, a bunch of other things, those are not shooting. They're not rolling dice. Even when with Vortex of Doom, where arguably you roll some dice, it's an ability of the model or the faction. It is not an actual attack. So lone op only applies to the shooting attacks, not abilities. That is why you get to interact with the model despite being outside 12.
Okay. So here's another question for you. And this is one of the easy questions, right? This is for our beginners out there. Can I fight through my own friendly units? What I mean by this is, let's say I have a predator and I charge it into an enemy unit.
Okay.
And then decide to charge my blade guard into that same unit. But because of how I charged with my predator, I can't get my entire blade guard unit to make base contact or make contact with bases of my own models in that blade guard unit. Can I fight through the predator?
No. And the simple answer is yes. There's the bullet point, arguably, of you get to fight if you're in engagement range, and you get to fight if you're within base contact of a friendly model in base contact. However, the caveat is when they're referring to friendly model, and it is clarified somewhere, that they're referring to in the same unit. Okay. Now, most of us, when we read the rules, right, we kind of try to remember them. And when we remember them, we paraphrase. We don't remember every the and every like 16th comma. But the reality is, if you go back and double check that, it's talking about friendly model in the same unit. Because the predator is not in the same unit, you cannot use that as a model to fight through. Now, going back a little bit to what we were talking about before with characters, if there's a character in your unit leading it, now, even though it's a separate data sheet, it is in the same unit. So now the character could base, and the rest of the models that are based with that character in the same unit could swing through the character, even though he's a different data sheet.
Okay. So at this point, I think we're going to take a little mid break. And when we get back, I've got 6 more questions for you, and we'll see if Sky has more too. Well, here we are in the middle of our episode. Do you know what the first thing we have to do in the middle of our episode is?
Patrons.
So we have to thank our Guardsman patron, Sergeant Matt. I got it right this time.
Yeah.
We also have to thank our White Shield Guardsman patrons, Mitch and Nicodemus. So thank you to our patrons. Make sure you're getting Chris to give you his goodies. Okay, you got to make him give you good goods.
We're very, very, very grateful for our White Shield Guardsman, but Sergeant Guardsman is better.
Gosh. So as a reminder for memberships, because we haven't reminded you in a while. So each tier gets you different access to different things. White Shield Guardsman will get you early access to the episodes and exclusive voting power on when we put polls up on Patreon to vote for episodes. Guardsman will give you all of those goodies, plus you can submit a list to Chris to review once per month. So we can help you build and, better your list and help you to get to where you want to get with the army you're trying to play, with the models you're trying to play with. Our Commissar level gets you all of that, plus Chris will also test and build lists for you, a list per month. So another good. And the other crazy level we have is the Inquisitor level. We expect no one to get this.
Don't do it.
Don't do it. But if you do,
player, I hate the Inquisition. Don't do it.
But if you do, you get all of those goodies. Plus, we will be sending random gifts out at random times for the Inquisitor level. So that's your little added bonus, is you get maybe a random gift here or there. So, but those are our levels.
And it will not be a Scaventide box. I promise.
You sure?
For those of you who don't know, everyone at Adepticon got a Scaventide box.
It didn't sell poorly at all. Anyway, yes, we appreciate all of you. Please feel free to do the Patreon thing. It helps us out a ton. Also, it'll keep me busy helping all of you out. In addition to that, this is one of our pre-recorded episodes, so we don't have a lot of news for you. If you're listening to this, we are probably in the middle of painting and moving heavy objects to the new location. We hope to see a lot of you there. But no news this week around.
So with that being said, the only thing left to mention is our sponsor, which is us. Go to our store. Go check out our stuff. GW 15% off, as always. All GW products. We run deals on almost everything we have in the store. You're getting discounts off of a lot of stuff. Go check out the store, gophermafia.com. Go check it out. Go see what you want on there. If there's anything you're looking for, if we don't have it, you can always send us a message, send us an email, and let us know. And if we can get it, we will. But yeah, go check out some of our merch there too. Some of our own Gopher merch. We're doing some t-shirt stuff every once in a while now, so go check that out. Other than that, do you guys have anything to add?
Nope. I'm busy painting walls.
No, I'm busy living on the second floor where Aaron's not allowed.
That's not true at all.
No, that's where we hide him. His little cave's there.
He's too scared to come down from his high tower.
You're right.
No, he's just he's hiding out in his cave because he's a little dwarf. It's fine.
It's just the proportions. All right. He's still hero scale.
I'm hero scale dwarf.
He's got a big head. Yep.
Oh my God. Well, on that note, let's go to the last part of the episode.
Hurry before we insult Aaron more.
Well, here we are. Last part of the episode. Chris, I got 6 more doozies for you, and then I don't know what Sky's going to throw you, but I'm ready for it.
I'm dodging bullets. Start throwing.
All right. So, first question. If attacking unit has fights first and the defending player has fights first, who in fact will fight first?
Okay. So 2 things are true here. First, I want to clarify when it comes to the fight phase, we're going to go back to the same thing I keep saying. Treat everything as bullet points. We can actually do this with the whole fight phase, in that there are 2 sub phases if we break this out into bullet points. You have the fights first sub phase, and then you have the regular fight phase. All units that have fights first go there. Doesn't matter which side you're on. They all go before any regular fights goes. Okay. So now that we know that, we're going to put that off to the side. Now, because you both have fights first, it's just like normal fight phase, which most of us are used to, where it's alternating activation with the non-active player first. Okay. So if I made the charge and I have fights first because I charged, gotcha. It turns out you have fights first natural because you have a relic or something like that. You're the non-active player because it's my turn. Mm-hmm. You would actually swing before I do. Okay. After you fight, it's alternating activation. So I'd go with one of my fights first. And then if you had another fights first for some reason, because let's say you did a stratagem or something like that, then you would go with one and then it'd go back to me. And it's alternating activation, non-active player first. You do all the fights first, then you go to regular fights. Non-active player goes first, alternating activation. Very simple stuff once you understand it.
Mm-hmm. Okay, super simple. You ready for one that's not going to be so simple?
Yes.
We've had this question pop up in the store a lot too. When is coherency checked in each phase?
Nope. Already incorrect, right?
No. The question is, when is it checked in each phase?
It's not.
Okay.
Okay, so coherency, every time you move the models, I'm making a normal move, advance, charge, pile in, consolidate, I am moving my models. I am obligated to maintain coherency. I can never break coherency, period. Now, coherency can be broken. And the only way to do this is by having models die. So my opponent fights back or they shoot at me because it's their turn. I'm allowed to pick whatever model I want out of the unit to die. And then because of that, I could end up breaking coherency. This in general is okay for a time. At the end of the turn, when your opponent's like scoring cards or you're scoring cards and it's the end of the turn, we're about to go to next turn's command phase. That is the time where if a unit is out of coherency, you start taking models away from the unit until it regains coherency. You just remove models. There's no save. There's no, I get to move them. You just lose models until that time. The reason this matters is because you can break coherency and regain it before the time when you're obligated to start removing models at the end of the turn. I could declare a charge and you could say Overwatch, and then you got flamers. So you end up killing like 2 of my dudes and break my coherency. Well, that's okay. I don't have broken coherency, but I'm going to make my charge move. Now that I'm making my charge move, I have to regain coherency and I'm good to go again. Didn't have to remove any models. Same thing goes for fight phase. You could swing at me first and I could lose some models breaking coherency. But then if I select my unit to fight, because I haven't lost any models yet other than the ones you killed, I could pile in or consolidate and regain coherency. And now I don't lose any models to coherency. It's only at the end of the turn that you lose models. However, you are constantly checking, air quotes, coherency, because every time you move the models, you have to regain coherency. You cannot break it via your choice at any time. It's only by models dying that you can ever break it.
So essentially in the shooting phase, let's say I know they're going to charge this unit, and they shoot the holy daylights out of this unit and kill like 4 of my 10 models.
Sure.
And I've broken coherency slightly because I know they're going to charge me to finish the job, but I want to make their charge really hard. I can do that.
Yes.
And by turn, end of turn, you mean end of each a person's turn, correct?
Correct. Yeah. So it doesn't matter whose turn it is. At the end of that individual turn, any unit that has broken coherency removes model until they regain it.
Okay. So super simple.
Yes.
So that brings me to the next question. Can you target a unit with multiple stratagems?
As long as you can afford it. So there's no restriction that says a unit can't be under the influence of multiple things. If you want to pop smoke and armor of contempt, absolutely. As long as you can afford it, you could throw 6 stratagems on there. The reality is that's probably not a great idea, but you could. Now, obviously, if you can't afford it, you're only doing the one. But there's no restriction that prevents you from doing multiple.
Okay. So next question is, do auras that models give off affect themselves as well as other units?
The short answer is yes, but it depends on the wording of the individual aura. So for example, Tyranids are a great example. There's a monster that says infantry within 6 inches. Well, it turns out it doesn't apply to itself because it's not infantry. But most Primarchs or whoever else, when they say like Ultramarines within 6, well, Gilliman's still an Ultramarine, so he does affect himself. And this applies in every scenario. It just depends on the wording of the individual aura. But if the aura doesn't prevent it for some reason, then yes, it affects the unit itself.
Okay. So here's a doozy for you. You've had it easy for far too long. I want you to explain to me the new Hellbrute Frenzy ability and how it's working. Because across the internet, people are losing their minds.
Okay.
That this thing is able to get all kinds of movement and extra fights.
Okay, so as you may have heard in previous episodes, this has existed before. It has actually existed since the beginning of the edition. It was just on Murderfang, Space Wolf Dreadnought. Mm-hmm. It's a little different now, but not by much. Okay, it's basically the same rule. So the short answer is Hellbrute, so let's say, makes a charge. He made the charge, he fights first, he fights. Okay, cool. He kills something and then can consolidate into another unit. This is all normal. Most people don't have questions on this. The problem becomes his ability. After he piles into a different unit, that unit then swings at him. Well, even though he's already swung, his ability says anytime an enemy unit targets him for an attack, after they're done with the attack, so they get to finish their attacks first, just in case they kill him, if he's still alive, he gets to fight again. So where this becomes a little crazy, and people are seeing it now, is let's say the Hellbrute charges a Rhino. Absolutely just chunks the Rhino. Well, now you disembark the unit that was inside and he consolidates into the unit. Well, now the unit inside is engaged. They're obligated to swing at him. So they swing at him and they probably don't kill him. And then he gets to swing again and probably ends up killing the unit that was inside the transport because he's a really good melee dreadnought. And now that he's killed them, you get the full fight phase every time you're selected to fight, because being selected to fight gives you a pile in, fight, and consolidate. So after he fights a second time, he still gets a second consolidate. And if he makes it into a third unit, now that unit gets to swing at him. And then because they swung at him, he gets to swing a third time. And this is affectionately called pinballing. So again, this has already existed in the game. It was on Space Wolf Dreadnought Murderfang. He lost it. It is arguably not unreasonable. Okay. This is very powerful. It's very good. It's not actually unreasonable. The reason it seems so crazy right now is specifically because World Eaters so easily get to give that Hellbrute a 6-inch consolidate. That's the crazy part, right? you are obligated to fight. If you give him the 6-inch consolidate, he likely makes it into engagement of another unit if he's planning ahead, which means he's guaranteed to get to fight again. And then he pinballs from unit to unit, just clobbering kids. I am of the belief and hope that we are going to see an errata on him. Maybe it's to limit that ability to once per turn. That wouldn't be unreasonable. Maybe they change it so that he's not affected by the 6-inch consolidate. Either way, I would be happy. I do think it's a little overpowered at the moment, and I hope it gets nerfed. But also, I don't know that he needs to lose that ability entirely. Murderfang had it for a very long time, and it turns out Murderfang was rarely played, despite having effectively the same ability. So it's not the ability that's the problem. It is more of a problem now than it used to be, fair. But the main issue is giving them the 6-inch consolidate so easily makes it to where it pinballs pretty consistently. Mm-hmm. And if you don't see it coming, it's hard to stop if you didn't plan ahead.
So, my final question, and then we're going to pitch it over to Sky.
Okay. Oh, boy. I hope you like questions.
Oh, buddy. So, we've seen this happen a lot in the store. We've seen it happen a lot at GTs. We've seen it happen a lot everywhere. Pivot rule. Who has to pivot and by how much?
All right. So I'm not going to spoon feed you all the things, but here's what you need to know. Most people argue about rules and don't look them up because they remember a thing and they're too busy trying to say that they remembered correctly than it is to just look it up and verify. Okay. Mm-hmm. Looking up a rule does not mean that you you didn't know or whatever else. It's just nope, we're going to look it up so we both know and learn a thing. Look up the rules. If you go to the same document I mentioned earlier, it's the core rules update on Warhammer Community. It's free. You can do the find function or just scroll down till you find pivot, and there's a whole table. Yes, it's a little confusing because it's a table and there's 6 different line items, and those line items encompass a bunch of different things. I understand why it's confusing, but also do not be afraid to reference the table. Some things have a negative 2-inch move if they pivot or rotate in any way. Some of them have only a minus 1 inch, and some are unaffected by this at all. All I can tell you is look up the table.
All right. Well, that is my final question I prepared for you from Reddit.
Is it my turn?
It's your turn, Sky. Ask away.
I got some good ones. Okay. So say you have sustain hits 1 in shooting.
Sure.
And you have a reroll all hits.
Uh-huh.
Can you reroll all the stuff that can give you sustained?
Yes.
And can you reroll the dice that sustained gave you?
Okay, first off, there's a misunderstanding of how the rules work there. So the short answer is you get sustained on an unmodified hit of 6. You do not determine what the final result of the die is until after you're done with your rerolls. Okay, you rolled a hit, you decide what you're going to reroll because you can reroll any hit, which means let's say you hit on a 3+, you absolutely can reroll a 3 that would hit normally because you're fishing for sustained or lethal or whatever. Okay, because it just says you can reroll any hit. If you roll an unmodified 6 and you don't want to kill the unit too hard because you're trying to charge them later, you could even reroll the 6 trying to not get sustained. I don't know why you would, but you could. Now, after you're done rerolling, all of your 6s are sustained. So you're going to add an extra die to the pool for your to wound rolls. So the idea that you get to re-roll the sustained die would be during the wound roll. It doesn't have anything to do with to hitting.
Okay.
Does that make sense?
It makes sense. That's so funny. So if you have, let's see, lethal hits.
Yes.
And dev wounds, but you want to fish for dev wounds, it would make sense to re-roll your lethal hits.
Potentially, yes. Obviously, depending on what your to hit value is, like if it's like a 5 up because you're orcs, re-rolling that to get away from lethals sounds pretty rough because you're not likely to hit at all, which doesn't help you get dev wounds. But assuming you're hitting well, say you're custodes, you're hitting on 2s with lethals, but you also have dev wounds, you'd rather dev. Absolutely. You can re-roll the 6 to not get a lethal, hopefully, but you can't re-roll a re-roll. So in this case, and in every case, you roll a die, you decide to re-roll it, you have to take the second result. You can't choose to take the first one. You can't decide to roll again with a CP or anything. Cannot re-roll a re-roll.
Okay. A different question. So when you give something when this model is destroyed on a 4-up, it can fight before it gets removed.
Yes.
When you're giving the rule to each model, and there are multiple units engaged with that unit of models with this ability, can one enemy unit attacking trigger some to die, and those ones fight back, and the other unit attacks, trigger some to die, and then they fight back? Isn't that 2 separate fights, assuming all models only fight once?
Yes and no. So this has more to do with the timing. So arguably you should go a little slower with some of this. We tend to fast roll a lot, which for the most part is fine and is actually good for the game. There are some rare instances where it actually makes things more confusing. But Unit 1 attacks your unit. You lose 3 models. As you're losing those models, because you're rolling your saves, the first model dies. Technically, you should stop, roll on the 4-up, see if it's going to attack. If it doesn't, you remove the model right then. Then you continue with your saves. If you are going to fight, then you say this one is still going to fight later. I don't remove it, but it is dead. And then you roll the other saves. And then look, the second unit, or second model, I should say, dies, also gets to fight. And then the third one, nope, saved him, he's good. So now the 2 models that fight immediately after the first attacking unit completes all of its attacks. And you leave the model in place because you actually determine what that model is allowed to swing at. So if you end up killing a model in the back, even though it gets to fight, it with a pile-in may not actually get to within range of anything and may not really get to fight. The individual model matters. You want to go slow for this part.
Couldn't it also pile into the second unit instead of the first unit that just swung at them too?
Sure could.
Assuming they're valid.
You're doing that by model. The unit is not being selected to fight. It's that model is fighting before it leaves. So now that you've fought with those 2 models, removed them from the table, and then you go to the next unit. So let's say the second unit then fights that unit and kills 2 more guys. Well, those 2 guys then get to roll, see if they fight, and they could fight. Then after that, you still have some models left in the unit. Now the unit gets selected to fight, and those models then get to fight. The only time is that they don't is when the reverse happens. So let's say you charge and you swing with all your dudes. Okay, well now every model in the unit has fought. And because of the wording of your fights on death ability, the wording says you roll on a 4-up and they get to fight before they're removed if they haven't already fought. Well, now because you fought first and you already swung with every single one of those models, even if you roll a 4+, you don't get to swing because you've already fought once this fight phase. So that's based upon timing and also the individual wording of the ability. There is technically no restriction, i.e. the Helbert, that says you're only allowed to fight once. There is a rule that says you're only allowed to select that unit to fight once, so that we're not just alternating fighting until one of us is dead forever.
Right. Also, they don't count as a selection, right? So after one
Correct.
of your opponent's unit fights and trigger some fight on deaths, you, assuming you're alternating or interrupting, you would still get your choice of things to fight, to choose to fight.
Because you have not selected the unit to fight. You have fought with 2 of those models, but you have not selected the unit to fight. And thus the rest of the models in that unit have not fought yet.
Sillier question. do you have to pile in to the closest enemy unit?
Okay, so this is a yes and no problem because you're looking at individual models. Each model has several obligations. Again, look at it as bullet points. So the first one says, if I'm able to base, I'm obligated to base. Okay. Now you can choose 0 inches, and that's a weird thing. But if you move at all, you can base, you are then obligated to base. It also, separate bullet point, says you have to end closer than you started to the nearest enemy model. Well, if that's the unit you're engaged with, do the thing. But there are instances based upon where you move from charging or where they moved when they charged you. You could possibly end up in a scenario where this model is obligated to pile into this other unit that I'm not normally engaged with because they're the closest enemy model. This tends to happen with big units like Orc Boys with 20 models. You're all over the board. So yes, sometimes you end up piling into things you didn't intend to.
I'm thinking of the boys are having Mardi Gras with like a unit of Sanguinary Guard, and Mephiston's over there like 2 inches away watching.
Yeah.
And I play the fight on death stratagem on the boys. The boys have already based to base, tied up as many as they can. And some boys that are a rank or 2 ranks back are within 3 inches of Mephiston. Now, when the Sanguinary Guards swing and kill some boys, I can pull those, choose to pull those models as the destroyed models, roll the 4 up to fight on death. And if the right ones get selected, which I think you'd have to go model by model to...
Correct. You'd have to slow it down, roll per model.
In
that
theory,
one fights, roll the next save. That one doesn't fight, roll the next save. Yes.
In theory, 1 or 2 could pile into Mephiston and give him a little slappy slap.
Correct. Now, this is a high-level use of this ability. This is exactly, how this works. This is a bit confusing because you have to like kind of plan ahead and know how the fight phase works really well in order to do this properly.
It also means that something like Pile in 6 combined with an ability like this can be very crazy.
You're right. Now, there are a couple of caveats to this, though. You have to keep in mind the whole time you're doing this, you're trying to maintain unit coherency. You have to end closer to the nearest enemy model than you started. Just because I can't base the unit I'm engaged with, if that enemy model is still closer than the other guy, even though I could engage him in theory, he's not the closest enemy model. So yes, there are several obligations you have that are higher than I just want to roll dice. And you have to meet those obligations before you're allowed to roll dice. This is a complex question that is probably best explained visually, but
sure.
I hope I explained that reasonably.
I think it's satisfactory.
All right. Any more questions?
Yeah. When am I going to get good at this game?
Well, I can't tell you when you're going to be good. I can only help you get better. So if you're in the local area and listening to this, we have a team. They all help each other. We have a Discord that is also very helpful. And then I happen to hang around on occasion. We're all here to help you show up and do the thing.
All right. Well, it sounds like we've asked all our questions. We've done the thing. We're happy.
I think I need harder questions.
To be fair, some of them were reasonably hard questions. And that's mostly because, again, in this very complex game, visuals tend to be a little better at explaining some of these answers than just me talking. But no, there was a couple of pretty good ones in here.
All right. Well, I guess this is where we're end the episode. So thank you all for listening.
It's official.
Go ahead. What's official?
If you listen to this, you have to be better at the game now. No exceptions.
So is that the hill we're dying on?
Yeah, that's my opinion. I'm sorry.
We could probably do an episode at some point that's specifically tips and tricks on how to get better. Because yes, listening to these podcasts, doing your own research, whether it's looking up rules, whether it's discussing it with your friends, there's a bunch of ways to get better. But I think there's a few things that I've noticed over the many editions and years that we've kind of implemented with the team, and they have for sure worked very well. So maybe we'll do that at some point.
Yeah. Also, playing factions that Sky and Chris like is a bad idea.
Probably true. At least this edition.
Jesus.
I think Necron's the exception.
You're right. I've been doing rather well with them, and they're pretty stable. But I'm gonna have to go to Space Wolves for a while, and nobody should follow me. It's fine.
Yeah, but you just got buffs.
I am going into the dark with my buffed torch, which happens to be a flashlight with no batteries.
Oh, God. Well, on that note, thank you all for listening. Tune in next week.
Hey, everybody. It's Aaron. I want to thank you again for tuning in for this episode of Gopher's Workshop with us, hanging out and listening. Remember, leave a 5-star review. Let us know what you think. And if you feel like supporting us, you can always go to Patreon in the show notes below. Thanks. Till next time.